Hi, good morning. Welcome back from break. I am sorry that the Zoom class wasn't working. I think that it's because of the storm. I think that that's probably messing up our internet connections. That's my guess. I'm very happy that you have all received your book called Class Clown. I am going to read you the blurb on the back, or as I like to call it, it's the bumper sticker on the back of the book car. Let's begin. It's hard to be serious when you're the class clown. Lucas Gott is one of the smartest kids in Mrs. Hockaday's 3rd grade, but he's always in trouble. He races pencils, cracks jokes, and calls out in class without raising his hand. Lucas doesn't mean to be the class clown. He even decides to become the perfect student. But when he tries to change his ways, the most unexpected things happen. Now, without naming any names, does the description of Lucas Gott remind you of anybody you know? I can think of somebody. I'm thinking of somebody that reminds me of. Oh, look, now, as I'm opening up my copy, I noticed that one of the pages is ripped. Please forgive me if you received a copy with a little bit of writing in it. Look, there's a little bit of dirt on my page here. That other page was ripped. I bought us all used copies. One, because it's good for the planet to recycle, and two, because that was my only option. So, the table of contents, which is in the very beginning, this is going to tell us what each chapter is about based on the title. So, 1, a note from Mrs. Hockaday. Mrs. Hockaday is the teacher, so we must be beginning with a note from the teacher. If he's a class clown, maybe he's gotten in trouble, and this is like a note for his parents. 2, eyeglasses. Gonna have something to do with eyeglasses. 3, turning over a new leaf. Now, this isn't somebody going to a plant and turning the leaf over. This is a saying that means starting from scratch, starting from the beginning, turning over a new leaf. Chapter 4, Lucas makes a bet. 5, wrestling feats. Going to be related to something about the sport of wrestling, I'm thinking. 6, the cultural arts program. Ooh. Our culture defines how we behave, what kind of clothes we wear, what kind of foods we eat. The cultural arts program. Chapter 7, a class circus for a class clown. Yikes. I don't have any good guesses about that one. Chapter 8, another note from Mrs. Hockaday. All right, this is going to be my guess. My prediction, is that the first note is going to be a bad note, that he was bad and that she's writing the note home to his parents. That chapter 8, the another note from Mrs. Hockaday, is going to be a nice note, all about how he has done well, he's worked hard, and how everybody should be proud of him. I haven't read this book, just like you. I'm reading this for the first time with you. So those are my guesses based on the bumper sticker in the back and the titles of the chapters. So let's begin reading together. Chapter 1 on page 1. A note from Mrs. Hockaday. The first Tuesday in October was very much like any other day in Mrs. Hockaday's 3rd grade. Lucas Gott felt bored and restless. When you're restless, you can't sit still. I have a feeling every single one of us knows what that feeling is like. He always felt restless in class. During social studies, he sat digging his initials into his desk with the tip of his ballpoint pen. What? The L was easy to make because it was just 2 straight lines. It was the C that gave him some trouble. He wanted it to curve evenly. Lucas is writing on his desk, a voice called out. It was Cricket Kaufman. Oh, that's a great name. who sat in the seat across the aisle from Lucas. She was always spying on him. I am not, said Lucas, slipping his pen up the long sleeve of his shirt. Oh, what a trickster! Yes, you are, Cricket insisted. I saw you do it. Mrs. Hockaday came over to investigate. Someone has written L.C. on this desk, she said, looking at Lucas. It could have been someone else. It didn't have to be me, Lucas pointed out. It is unlikely that someone else would bother to vandalize your desk with your initials, said Mrs. Hockaday. You didn't see me, Lucas protested. But I did, said Cricket proudly. Yeah? Well, it's just your word against mine, Lucas said, turning to face the girl who always seemed to get him in trouble. And as he turned, the pen fell out of his sleeve and onto the floor. See, said Cricket, pointing to it, there's the proof. Everyone in the class knew that Cricket was planning to become a lawyer when she grew up. She practiced all the time. Mrs. Hockaday sent Lucas out of the room to get some wet paper towels and soap from the boys' room. I want you to wash that desk as well as you can, she told him. Lucas grinned as he rubbed on the desk. It was more fun than doing social studies. The day continued as usual with Lucas getting in trouble 3 or 4 more times. Just before dismissal, Lucas reached in his pocket and removed a drinking straw that he had placed there at lunchtime. He sat listening to Mrs. Hockaday reading, and at the same time, he pretended that he was smoking a cigarette. What's wrong with this kid? Bring this kid into my class. I'll deal with him. As he had seen actors do in the movies. Mrs. Hockaday looked up from the book. Lucas Cott! What are you doing now? She walked up the aisle and took the straw away from Lucas. This is the last straw. Okay, that's funny because that's a phrase that means, that's it, I've had it. It also was a straw that was in his mouth, so that's why it was kind of funny. This is the last straw. No, it isn't, said Lucas, smiling. He removed a second plastic drinking straw from his pocket. I have another, he announced. The class laughed, and Lucas looked around the room, grinning happily. He liked to make everyone laugh. He had a reputation for being a real clown. Mrs. Hockaday sat down at her desk and wrote a message on her personal stationery, just as the dismissal bell rang. So here's the note from Mrs. Hockaday. As Lucas was walking out of the classroom, Mrs. Hockaday stopped him. Please give this note to your mother, she said. Lucas looked at the note. It was just a folded sheet of paper, not even put in an envelope. The temptation to read it was very strong. Lucas wondered what Mrs. Hockaday had to say to his mother. He waited until he was walking home before he opened the paper. Luckily, he had learned how to read cursive writing. The note said, Please call the school to make an appointment to speak to me. I find that Lucas is very obstreperous in class. Obstreperous. Obstreperous. Like, he doesn't listen, he's out of control, he's wild, he's a distraction. Gah! The first sentence was easy for Lucas to read, but he did not know what the big word in the second sentence meant. Obstreperous had never been on any of the vocabulary lists that Mrs. Hockaday had assigned to the class. Lucas looked around and saw Cricket waiting for the crossing guard to signal that the children could cross the street. Even though Lucas did not like Cricket, there was no denying that she was the smartest girl in the 3rd grade. Her papers were always neat and finished before anyone else's. And she was always waving her hand in the air to be called on. Cricket always had an answer, and her answers were always right. Lucas went over to Cricket and showed her the note. "Can you read this word?" he asked her. "That's the letter that Mrs. Hockaday asked you to take home to your mother," she said, recognizing the teacher's pink stationery. "I'm taking it home right now," said Lucas, "but I want to know what she wrote." "You shouldn't read letters that aren't addressed to you," said Cricket righteously. "I would never do a thing like that." Nevertheless, although the letter was not addressed to her either, she looked at the paper that Lucas held out to her. "What's that big word?" Lucas asked. Cricket sounded out all the syllables. It's a kind of doctor," she said knowingly. "It's the kind of doctor that a lady goes to when she's having a baby." She's wrong, by the way. "I know all about it because my mother is going to have a baby next month. I'm going to be a big sister." She swelled with importance. Like, look at me as I say that again. I will be swelling with importance. "I am going to be a big sister." "I'm a big brother already," said Lucas. Cricket always thought she was so special. Wait until she discovered that it wasn't such a big deal to have a baby in the house. "I have 2 brothers, and they're twins," he reminded Cricket. Then Lucas paused for a moment. An idea had just occurred to him. "Why would Mrs. Hockaday call me a doctor?" "Maybe she thinks that you're going to be a doctor when you grow up," said Cricket. "I could be a doctor if I wanted, but I'm going to be a lawyer instead. Then, when I get older, I can be elected president of the United States." "Well, I'm not going to vote for you," shouted Lucas, grabbing the letter away from Cricket. And then he ran across the street, even though the crossing guard had not signaled that it was time. Young man! The crossing guard shouted at him. But Lucas just kept on running and didn't turn back. He ran all the way home and proudly presented his mother with the letter from his teacher. It wasn't every day that he brought home such a fine note. "I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up," he announced. "Really?" asked Mrs. Cott with surprise. "I thought you were going to be a wrestler." "That was yesterday," Lucas explained. "Mrs. Hockaday says I am going to be a doctor that helps ladies make babies. Good Lord, where is this book going?" Mrs. Cott read the note that her son had handed her. "Oh, Lucas," she sighed. She read the note on the pink stationery a second time. Apparently, she wasn't as smart as Cricket Kaufman, because after a moment she went off and returned with a dictionary. A dictionary is a book. My goodness, I can't believe I have to explain this. A dictionary is a book that has a whole lot of words in there, and every word has a definition. So if you don't know what a word means, you can open up this old school book called a dictionary. It's probably being used in your house right now to hold up like a couch leg. You can look up these words in a dictionary. Mrs. Cott turned the pages until her finger stopped at the word obstreperous. Us. Resisting control in a noisy manner. Wow. So obstreperous means to resist control in a noisy manner. Now all of a sudden I'm thinking of another kid that this reminds me of. "Babies are noisy," Lucas agreed. "Babies are noisy, and so are you," said his mother. "Mrs. Hockaday is not at all happy about your behavior in class." "I thought she said I was going to be a doctor," said Lucas. He could not believe that Cricket was wrong. Cricket was never wrong, no matter how difficult the work in class. "You must be thinking of Obstetrician. Obstetrician. That's a doctor. And you will never become an obstetrician or anything else until you settle down in class and do your work. Ouch, said Mr. Cod. You must have been misbehaving to come home from school with hands like those. Lucas looked at his hands. They were covered with pink, red, green, orange, and yellow stains. He grinned at his mother. Claudia got some new marking pens and she brought them to school, he explained. They are all different colors and they smell like foods. The red is cherry and the yellow is lemon. So I tested them. And I tasted them too. You tasted the marking pens? His mother asked, making a face. They could be poisonous. Nah, said Lucas. Nothing happened. Lucas, you must not put things in your mouth unless they are truly meant to be eaten, scolded Mrs. Cott. Mrs. Cott, excuse me. Then they shouldn't make them smell so good, Lucas said. I completely agree. Why are we making markers that smell like food? Like, what is the idea there? Are we supposed to, like, make people think that this smells delicious and then people are not to be tempted to lick it? I completely agree. It's a stupid invention. The best one was orange. It smelled delicious, but it tasted blah, just like the others. You mean like it tasted like marker? Oh, Lucas, sighed his mother. When are you going to learn to act your age? Did you do anything else naughty at school today? She asked. Lucas took a banana from the fruit bowl and began to peel it as he thought. I didn't do anything, he said. Writing on his desk wasn't so bad, and it certainly wasn't noisy. You must have done something, said his mother. Think hard. Well, this morning I invented a great game, said Lucas, chewing a mouthful of banana. I rolled my pencil across the desk until it landed in a little space on the end. Then I showed Julio how to do it, and we had races. My pencil won more time than his. You know that little groove at the top of our desks? That's what he's talking about. Rolling the pencil until it lands in that little groove. You know, thank goodness that we're not in the same classroom right now, because all of you would be trying these things as we're reading. What was everyone else doing while you fellows were having pencil races? Asked Mrs. Cott. They were working on their arithmetic workbooks. Arithmetic is math, said Lucas. But Julio and I were having more fun. And besides, I had already finished all the problems Mrs. Hockaday assigned us. After a while, some of the other kids saw us and they began having pencil races too. Pretty soon, everyone was having them. Except Cricket, he remembered. Pencil races are obstreperous behavior, said his mother. But everyone was doing it, objected Lucas. And I'm the only one who got a note sent home. Did you do anything else? Asked his mother. Well, during USSR, Mrs. Hockaday made me sit outside the classroom on a chair in the hallway. USSR? Universal Sustained Silent Reading. That's when everyone in the whole school reads at the same time. Oh, yes. I forgot, said Mrs. Cott. Well, why did you have to sit outside? Weren't you reading like everyone else? Sure I was reading, said Lucas. But Mrs. Hockaday got angry because I was opening and closing the Velcro tabs on my sneakers. She said I was distracting everybody. Okay, now all of a sudden he's reminding me of all of us. It does sound a tiny bit obstreperous to me, said Mrs. Cott. Did you do anything else today? I called out the answers during English instead of raising my hand, Lucas admitted. That's bad, said his mother. Suppose everyone called out the answers all the time. How could Mrs. Hockaday keep order in the classroom? But if I don't call out the answers, then she always calls on Cricket. And Cricket is so smart that she raises her hand before Mrs. Hockaday even asks the questions. That way, her hand is up in the air first, and it's not fair. Promise me that tomorrow you won't have any pencil races or play with the Velcro tabs on your sneakers or call out answers, begged Mrs. Cott. You're a smart kid, Lucas, and Mrs. Hockaday is so busy scolding you for misbehavior that she'll never have time to find out. You really think I'm smart? Asked Lucas. Of course I do, said his mother. Don't you remember your father and me telling you how early you learned to speak? The twins are only able to say a few words, but when you were their age, you were speaking in complete sentences. But sometimes it's better not to speak and just hold your tongue. Don't call out answers. Just raise your hand. You can have hand-raising races with Cricket instead of pencil races with Julio. Yeah, said Lucas. That's a good idea. A sharp scream came from the next room. The twins are waking from their nap, sighed Mrs. Cott. Enough bananas. She grabbed a banana from Lucas. You had one already. You'll spoil your appetite for supper. Supper is dinner. Okay, Lucas sighed. It seemed whatever he opened his mouth for, it was wrong. Putting things in or letting words out. I'll go ride my bike, he announced. When Marcus and Marius woke up from their naps, they were pretty cranky. It would be better to stay outside. Good, said Mrs. Cott. I have to ride by Cricket's house, he said. Lucas didn't want to wait until tomorrow to tell her that for once she had gotten an answer wrong. She didn't even know what the word obstreperous meant. Boy, was she dumb. Yikes. That was chapter 1. I'm really into this book so far. It's a lot of fun. It reminds me of just about everybody I know. And I'm really looking forward to reading the rest with you tomorrow. I hope our Zoom talk works tomorrow. And if not, worst case scenario, we'll do this again. Have a wonderful day. Happy birthday, Grace.